The champagne flute slipped from my trembling hand, shattering against the marble floor of the historic ballroom at the Nines Hotel. Jessica stood there in her designer dress, arms crossed, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her elbow. As she delivered the words that would shatter my world just as completely as that glass. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Hey, David, I can't do this anymore. The wedding is off. Days. We had 5 days until our wedding, and here she was. Canceling everything because Ryan Thompson had waltzed back into Portland after 3 years in San Francisco, carrying his tech money and childhood memories like weapons designed specifically to destroy what we'd built together. Jessica, what are you talking about? The invitations went out months ago. Your dress is hanging in our closet. My parents just signed the final catering contract yesterday. My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated how desperate I sounded. She rolled her eyes the same way she did when I asked her to help with dishes after dinner. David, you're being dramatic. It's just postponed. Brian needs me right now. He's going through a really difficult transition, and I'm the only person in Portland who truly understands him. The irony wasn't lost on me. 4 years ago, I was the one who understood Jessica Martinez better than anyone else. I was the one who held her when she cried after her grandmother's funeral, who drove her to the emergency room at 2 a.m. when she thought she was having a heart attack. But it turned out to be a panic attack from work stress. I was the one who learned to make her favorite Thai curry from scratch, because she mentioned offhandedly that she missed her college roommate Emma's cooking. Now, apparently understanding her was Ryan's job. What kind of transition? He asked. Though part of me already knew I wouldn't like the answer. Jessica's expression softened slightly, but not in the way it used to when she looked at me. This was different. This was the look she reserved for wounded animals and her nephew's scraped knees, buying a house in the Hawthorne district. Something about wanting to reconnect with his roots after all those years in California. He asked me to help him house hunt. And honestly, David, I realized how much I've missed having someone who really gets where I come from. Where she came from. The Martinez family had owned commercial real estate in Portland for 3 generations. Ryan's family had run the neighborhood grocery store until it got bought out by a chain when we were in high school. They'd grown up, 6 blocks apart, riding the same school bus, sharing the same inside jokes about teachers and classmates I'd never met. I, on the other hand, had grown up helping my parents navigate the bureaucracy of opening Chen Family Restaurant, translating documents and filling out forms because their English was still shaky after 15 years in America. Jessica and I had met at Blue Star Coffee on Division Street when I was studying for my business management finals, and she was taking a break from her marketing internship. She'd complimented my laptop sticker collection, and I'd bought her a lavender latte. Simple, easy. Nothing like the complicated history she shared with Ryan. So you're canceling our wedding to help your high school boyfriend house hunt? The words came out more bitter than I intended, but I was past caring about tone. Ex-boyfriend, David. And it's not just about the house. She walked over too, the window overlooking downtown Portland, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor of the ballroom where we were supposed to exchange vows this Saturday. Ryan and I have been talking every day since he got back. Really talking? About dreams? About what we want our futures to look like. He's thinking about starting his own consulting firm, and he wants to know if I'd consider leaving Martinez and Associates to be his business partner. Business partner. The phrase hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was already spreading beyond my ability to contain it. What about us? What about our future? I gestured around the ballroom at the space we'd booked 8 months ago, where my parents had insisted on paying for half the reception despite the strain it had put on the restaurant's already tight budget. Jessica turned back to me, and for a moment I saw something that looked like guilt flicker across her face. David, you're a good man. You've been so patient with me, so understanding. But I need you to understand this too. Ryan and I have history. We have shared experiences that go back to when we were kids. We understand each other's families, our neighborhood, our dreams. It's not something I can just ignore. About my family? What about understanding them? My voice was rising now, and I could feel the familiar heat of anger and panic mixing in my chest. My parents are counting on this marriage, Jessica. It's not just emotionally, but financially. You know, the restaurant is struggling since the pandemic. Your family's connections were going to help us secure the loan we need to stay afloat. The guilt on her face vanished, replaced by something colder. David, if you're only marrying me for my family's money, then maybe this is for the best. That's not what I said, and you know it. I stepped closer to her, desperate to make her understand. I love you, Jessica. I've loved you for 4 years. I've planned my entire future around you. But yes, our families matter too. Your parents told mine they were excited to welcome me into the family. My parents already consider you their daughter-in-law. This isn't just about us anymore. She shook her head, and I could see her retreating further into whatever bubble Ryan had created for her. That's exactly the problem, David. It's about everyone except what I actually want. Ryan makes me feel like I'm 18 again, like anything is possible. When I'm with him, I remember who I used to be before I got caught up in all these expectations and responsibilities. And who was that exactly? Because the woman I fell in love with was ambitious and driven and cared about building something meaningful. The woman I fell in love with wanted to expand her family's business, not run away from it to play house with her high school sweetheart. Jessica's face flushed, and I knew I'd hit a nerve. You think this is playing house? Ryan has already made more money in 3 years than most people see in a lifetime. He's offering me a real partnership, not just a role as the supportive fiancée who helps run her husband's family restaurant. The words stung more than I expected. Is that what you think this is? Is that what you think I want from you? Isn't it? She picked up her purse from the table where we'd been reviewing the final seating arrangements just an hour ago. David, when's the last time you asked me about my dreams? When's the last time you asked me what I wanted to do with my career, my life, my future? Everything is always about the restaurant, about your family, about what I can do to help. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. When had I last asked her about her dreams? When had I last thought about what she wanted beyond our shared future? I'm not saying this to hurt you, she continued, her voice softer now. I'm saying this because I need you to understand. Ryan sees me as an individual, not just as someone who fits into his existing life. He's asking me to create something new with him, something that's ours. And what about what's ours? What about 4 years of building a relationship? About the promises you made to me, to my family? About the wedding that's supposed to happen in 5 days? Jessica walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. I'll call the vendors tomorrow. I'll handle the cancellations. And David, I'm sorry. I really am. I can't marry you on Saturday. I can't marry you at all. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving me alone in the ballroom where we were supposed to promise to love each other forever. The broken champagne glass glittered on the floor like scattered diamonds. And I couldn't help but think about how fitting it was. Everything I'd thought was precious and permanent had just been shattered, and I wasn't sure how to even begin picking up the pieces. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. David, your mother is making extra spring rolls for the restaurant tomorrow. She says they're for good luck before the wedding. Come help us in the kitchen when you're done with the final venue check. I stared at the message, at the innocent excitement in my father's words. I felt something crack inside my chest that had nothing to do with the champagne glass on the floor. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring past my windows, like watercolors in the rain. When I pulled into the driveway of our small house in southeast Portland, I could see my parents through the kitchen window, working side by side in the warm glow of the overhead light. My mother was rolling dough for tomorrow's fresh noodles, and my father was prepping vegetables for the lunch rush. They looked so peaceful, so unaware that their son's life had just imploded. Inside, the house smelled like ginger and star anise, the comforting scents that had defined my childhood. My mother looked up from her work, flour dusting her apron, and smiled the way she always did when I came home. David, how did the venue check go? Is everything perfect for Saturday? English still carried traces of her Taiwanese accent, especially when she was excited. Your father and I were just talking about how proud we are. For years, and Jessica still makes you smile the way she did when you first brought her home. Stood in the doorway, watching my parents' expectant faces, and felt the weight of what I had to tell them settle on my shoulders like a lead blanket. Mom, Dad, we need to talk. 20 minutes later, my mother was crying quietly into her apron, while my father sat at our small kitchen table, his head in his hands. I'd told them everything, from Jessica's sudden change of heart to her plans. With Ryan, from the canceled wedding to the financial implications we were all too aware of. The deposit for the ballroom, my father said finally, his voice hollow. The catering, the flowers, the band. How much can we get back? I don't know yet. Jessica said she'd handle the cancellations, but I trailed off, knowing that getting money back was the least of our worries. The restaurant had been hanging on by a thread since the pandemic. We'd put everything we had into this wedding, banking on the connections Jessica's family would bring. The investors who would finally take us seriously once we were part of the Martinez family network. Maybe she'll change her mind, my mother said, hope threading through her voice. Maybe this Ryan, he's just a distraction. Jessica loves you, David. I see it in her eyes when she looks at you, but I wasn't so sure anymore. As I replayed the conversation in the ballroom, I realized that Jessica hadn't looked at me with love in months. When had her smiles become polite instead of genuine? When had her kisses become perfunctory instead of passionate? I'd been so focused on building our future that I'd missed the signs that she was already planning a different one. My phone buzzed. With a text from my college roommate Mark. Dude, I just saw Jessica's Instagram story. She's at some fancy restaurant with a guy I don't recognize. Everything okay? I opened Instagram with trembling fingers. There it was, Jessica's story from 2 hours ago. She was at Le Pigeon, one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants, raising a glass of wine across from a man with dark hair and an expensive suit. The caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings with an old friend, new beginnings." The phrase felt like a slap. Scrolled through more of her recent posts, seeing them with new eyes. 3 weeks ago, she'd posted a photo of herself at Powell's Books with the caption, "Rediscovering my favorite childhood haunts." 2 weeks ago, she'd shared a sunset photo from Mount Tabor with "Some places never change." And maybe that's beautiful. A week ago, she'd posted a throwback photo from high school with the caption, "Funny how the people who knew you before you became who you thought you had to be, are the ones who remind you who you really are." How had I missed it? How had I been so blind to the fact that she was already emotionally gone? Already building a narrative where I was the obstacle to her authentic self, instead of the partner who supported her dreams. My phone rang, and Emma's name appeared on the screen. Emma Rodriguez. Jessica's best friend since college. The one who'd been Jessica's maid of honor. The one who'd spent countless evenings at our house planning wedding details and laughing. Over wine, David? Her voice was soft, careful. Jessica just called me. She told me what happened. I'm so sorry. Did you know the question came out harsher than I intended? Did you know she was going to do this? Emma was quiet for a long moment. I knew she'd been talking to Ryan. I knew she was confused about some things. But David, I swear to you, I didn't know she was going to cancel the wedding. I thought she was just having pre-wedding jitters. Pre-wedding jitters? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Emma, she's planning a business with him. She's talking about their shared history like what we have doesn't matter. This isn't jitters. This is her choosing a completely different life. I know. I'm angry at her for handling it this way, if that matters. You deserved better than having your wedding canceled 5 days before. You deserved honesty about what she was feeling instead of being blindsided like this. Emma's words surprised me. I'd expected her to defend Jessica, to find some way to make this my fault, or to minimize what had happened. Usually formed a protective circle around her when she made decisions that hurt other people. She's not the same person she was in college, Emma continued. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Back then, she was so sure of what she wanted. She was driven, focused, excited about building something meaningful. But lately, she's been talking about feeling trapped, about wondering if she's living someone else's life instead of her own. Whose life? Mine? Because I never tried to trap her. I never tried to make her into someone she wasn't. I know that. But David, sometimes I think Jessica gets scared when things become too real, too permanent. In college, she broke up with her boyfriend the week before graduation because she said she felt like she was being pushed into a future she hadn't chosen. And before that, she dropped out of the study abroad program she'd been planning for 2 years because she said it felt like she was following someone else's script. A pattern. I was seeing a pattern that I'd somehow missed for 4 years. She did the same thing with the job at her dad's company, I said, the memory surfacing suddenly. She was supposed to start working there right after college, but she called it off at the last minute and took the marketing internship instead. She said she needed to prove herself somewhere else first. Exactly, and now she's doing it again, but this time with your wedding. Ryan represents something familiar but different, something that feels like her choice instead of the logical next step. I walked to the window, looking out at the street where Jessica and I had taken so many evening walks, talking about our dreams for the restaurant, for our future together. So, what am I supposed to do, Emma? Just accept that she's always going to run away when things get serious? Wait around hoping she'll eventually choose me over whatever escape route looks most appealing? No, Emma said firmly. To recognize that someone who keeps running isn't ready for the kind of commitment you want. And you're supposed to know that you deserve someone who chooses you not because you're the safe option, but because they can't imagine building a life with anyone else. Her words hit me like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. For 4 years, I'd been trying to be the perfect boyfriend, the understanding partner, the man who would give Jessica everything she needed to feel secure enough to choose me. But security wasn't what she was looking for. She was looking for something that felt like adventure, like possibility, like the chance to be someone different than who she'd been with me. David, can I ask you something? Sure. When's the last time you felt excited about your future? Not anxious, not determined, not responsible for making everything work out. Just excited. I thought about it, really thought about it. When had I last felt that spark of anticipation for what was coming next? When had I last looked forward to something instead of just working toward it? I don't remember, I admitted. That's what I thought, and I think maybe that's part of the problem. Jessica fell in love with someone who was passionate about his dreams, who talked about the restaurant like it was going to change the world. But somewhere along the way, you both started treating your relationship like a business merger instead of a love story. She was right when had our conversations stopped being about what we wanted to create together and started being about what we needed to accomplish. When had our dates become planning sessions for the wedding, the future, the next practical step? I should go, I said. I need to help my parents figure out what we're going to do about the restaurant. David, wait. There's something else. I need to tell you. Emma's voice was hesitant. I know this is terrible timing, but I won't be able to be Jessica's maid of honor anymore. Not after this. I can't stand beside her and pretend that what she did to you was okay. Emma, you don't have to choose sides. She's your best friend. She is. And because she's my best friend, I know she's making a mistake. That I know you're a good man who deserves better than being treated like a consolation prize. I've watched you for 4 years, David. I've seen how you take care of the people you love, how you work toward your dreams, how you try to make everyone around you happy. Jessica is lucky to have had you, and if she can't see that, then she doesn't deserve you. After I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, thinking about Emma's words. In all the chaos of the day, her voice had been the only thing that made me feel less alone. She'd seen me clearly, had understood not just what I was going through, but who I was as a person. When had Jessica stopped seeing me that way? My phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. David, I know you're hurt, but I hope you can understand that this is what's best for both of us. You want different things, and that's okay. I'll always care about you. I stared at the message, at the casual way she'd reduced 4 years of our lives to. We want different things, and felt something shift inside me. Maybe Emma was right. Maybe I did deserve someone who would choose me, not because I was safe, but because I was irreplaceable. I deleted the text without responding and drove home to help my parents plan for a future that no longer included Jessica Martinez. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Jessica. My phone had been buzzing since 6 a.m., but I'd ignored it, focusing instead on helping my parents open the restaurant for the breakfast rush. We moved around each other in the kitchen like a well-rehearsed dance, my mother manning the wok while my father prepped ingredients and I handled the front counter. Nobody mentioned the wedding that was supposed to happen in 4 days. Around 10 a.m., Jessica walked through the restaurant's front door, her designer heels clicking against the worn linoleum floor. She looked perfect, as always, her makeup flawless. Despite the early hour, there was something different about her posture, a brittleness that hadn't been there before. "David, we need to talk." Her voice carried across the small dining room, causing Mrs. Chen from down the block to look up from her congee with interest. "I'm working." I continued wiping down the counter, not looking at her directly. "If you want to talk, you can wait. Until we close at 3. This can't wait." Jessica approached the counter, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're not answering my calls. You're not responding to my texts. We need to discuss how to handle this situation like adults." I finally looked up at her, and for the first time in 4 years, I felt absolutely nothing. No flutter of attraction. No urge to make her smile. No instinct to accommodate whatever she needed. It was like looking at a stranger who happened to share a face with someone I used to love. Handle what situation? I made it pretty clear yesterday that there's nothing left to handle. Jessica glanced around the restaurant, clearly uncomfortable with the possibility of being overheard. "David, please, can we go somewhere private?" "No." The word came out harder than I intended, surprising both of us. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it here." My parents deserve to hear it too, since they're the ones who are going to have to deal with the financial consequences of your decision. My father emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. His expression was polite but cold, the way it got when he was trying to control his temper. "Jessica, I didn't expect to see you here. Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I know this is difficult for everyone, but I hope you can understand that sometimes we have to make hard choices for our own happiness." Hard choices. My father repeated the phrase like he was tasting something bitter. "Yes, I understand hard choices. I made a hard choice when I left everything I knew in Taiwan to come to America. I made a hard choice when I worked 6 days for 10 years to save enough money to open this restaurant. I made a hard choice when I put my family's future on the line to pay for a wedding that was supposed to happen in 4 days. Jessica's composure cracked slightly. "I never asked you to pay for anything. I never asked you to make sacrifices. For me, you didn't have to ask." My mother appeared from the kitchen, her voice quiet but firm. "When you love someone, you make sacrifices. When you commit to someone, you honor that commitment. These are not difficult concepts to understand." "I do love David," Jessica said, her voice rising slightly. "But love isn't always enough. Sometimes people want different things, and it's better to be honest about that than to pretend everything is fine." "And what is it that you want?" "Jessica?" I asked, setting down the cloth I'd been using to clean the counter. "Because yesterday you said you wanted to be with Ryan? You said you wanted to start a business with him? You said you wanted to remember who you used to be before? You got caught up in expectations and responsibilities. So what exactly are you doing here?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her almost. "I'm here because I care about you, David. I'm here because I don't want you to hate me. I'm here because I want to make sure we can end this in a way that doesn't destroy everything we've built together. Everything we've built together." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Jessica, you destroyed everything we built together the moment you decided that your high school boyfriend was more important than the promises you made to me. You don't get to control how that destruction happens. That's not fair. You're making this sound like I planned this, like I wanted to hurt you. Ryan and I didn't plan to reconnect. It just happened. When it did, I realized that I'd been settling for something safe instead of following my heart." Settling. I repeated the word, feeling it hit me like a physical blow. "Is that what 4 years of your life was? Settling? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant." I walked around the counter and Jessica took a step back. "You meant that I was the safe choice. You meant that what we had was comfortable but not exciting. You meant that you were doing me a favor by staying with me until something better came along." "David, please don't twist my words. You know I care about you. You know I've been happy with you. No, I don't know. That, because happy people don't throw away their entire future for someone they haven't seen in 3 years. Happy people don't cancel their wedding 5 days before it's supposed to happen. Happy people don't treat their partner like a consolation prize. Jessica wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara slightly. Never treated you like a consolation prize. I just realized that I've been trying to force myself to want something I don't actually want. And what is it that you want, Jessica? Really, because I'm starting to think you don't actually know. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her struggling to find an answer that would make sense to all of us. I want to feel alive. Again, I want to feel like I'm writing my own story instead of following someone else's script. I want to feel like the person I'm with sees me as an individual, not just as a piece of a puzzle they're trying to complete. And you think Ryan sees you that way? I know he does. When I'm with him, I feel like myself again. When I'm with him, I remember what it feels like to be excited about the future instead of just anxious about making everything work out perfectly.
Now my father
Made a disgusted sound. Excitement fades, Jessica. Responsibility, commitment, building. Something together, these things last. But you're too young to understand that. I'm not too young to understand anything, Jessica snapped, her composure finally cracking completely. I'm old enough to know that I don't want to spend my life managing someone else's dreams instead of pursuing my own. Managing someone else's dreams? My mother's voice was sharp with disbelief. Jessica, David never asked you to give up your dreams. He supported your career, your goals, your family. What dreams did he ask you to sacrifice? It's not about what he asked me to sacrifice. It's about what I felt like I had to sacrifice. Every conversation we had was about the restaurant, about his family, about what I could do to help. When's the last time anyone asked me what I wanted to do with my life? I asked you that question 3 months ago, I said quietly. When you were complaining about your job, I asked you what you really wanted to do. You said you wanted to expand your family's business into sustainable development. I spent 2 weeks researching grant opportunities and connecting you with people in that field. What did you do with that information? Jessica looked away, and I had my answer. You didn't do anything with it because you don't actually want. To solve problems, you want to run away from them. And that's fine, Jessica. That's your choice. But don't you dare stand in my family's restaurant and blame me for supporting your dreams. When you're the one who's too scared to actually pursue them. I'm not scared, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Yes, you are. You're terrified of committing to anything real. Anything that requires you to grow up and take responsibility for your choices. Ryan feels safe because he's familiar, because he represents a time when you didn't have to make adult decisions. But guess what? You're not 18 anymore. You can't keep running back to high school every time real life gets complicated. Jessica stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her cycling through anger, hurt, and something that might have been recognition. You think you know me so well, David, but you don't understand what it's like to feel like you're disappearing into someone else's life. And you don't understand what it's like to love someone so much that you're willing to build a life around them, only to discover that they see that love as a cage instead of a gift. She opened her mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at it, and Jessica's name was on the screen. But this wasn't from Jessica's phone. It was from Emma. David, I know this is complicated, but I need you to know that Jessica asked me to be her maid of honor at whatever wedding she ends up having with Ryan. I said no. I told her that what she did to you was wrong, and I can't pretend to support it. I hope you're okay. I looked up at Jessica, who was watching me with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Emma's not going to be your maid of honor anymore. Jessica's face went pale. What? She texted you. What did she say? She said she can't support what you did to me. She said she thinks you're making a mistake. Emma doesn't understand the situation. She doesn't know what it's like to feel trapped in a life that doesn't fit. Or maybe, I said, pocketing my phone, she's the only one who's been honest with you about what you're throwing away. Jessica looked around the restaurant again, at my parents who were watching this entire exchange with barely concealed disapproval, at the life I'd invited her to be part of, at the future we'd planned together. I should go. Yes, I said. You should. And Jessica, don't come back here. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to explain yourself anymore. You made your choice. Now live with it. She walked toward the door, then turned back one last time. David, I hope someday you can understand that I'm doing this because I love you enough to let you find someone who can give you what you deserve. What I deserve, I repeated slowly, is someone who doesn't think loving me is a sacrifice. After she left, the restaurant felt suddenly quiet. My parents went back to the kitchen without saying anything, but my mother squeezed my shoulder. As she passed, I stood behind the counter, staring at the door Jessica had just walked through, and felt something I hadn't expected: relief. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe. 2 days later, I was reorganizing the storage room behind the restaurant when Emma knocked on the back door. Through the small window, I could see her holding 2 cups of coffee and looking unusually nervous. I hadn't expected to see her so soon after her text, but something about her presence felt natural. Like she belonged in this moment of my life falling apart. I brought coffee, she said when I opened the door. Thought you might need some caffeine to get through all the vendor calls. She was right. I'd spent the morning on the phone with caterers, florists, and musicians, trying to cancel services for a wedding that was supposed to happen tomorrow. Most had been understanding, but the financial hits were adding up. The restaurant couldn't absorb losses like that without consequences. Thank you. I accepted the cup gratefully, noticing she'd remembered exactly how I liked it 2 sugars. No cream. How did you know I'd be here? Lucky guess. You always come here when you need to think. Emma looked around the cramped storage room, taking in the boxes of rice and canned goods stacked to the ceiling. Plus, Jessica mentioned, you'd probably be handling the cancellations yourself instead of letting her do it. She's been talking to you about me? Emma's expression grew uncomfortable. She calls me every few hours. She keeps saying she wants to make sure you're okay, but honestly, I think she's looking for someone to tell her she made the right choice. And what do you tell her? I tell her that she hurt a good man for no reason other than her own selfishness. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, but I could hear the anger underneath. I tell her that running away from commitment doesn't make her brave or authentic. It just makes her unreliable. We sat on overturned crates, drinking our coffee in the dim light filtering through the small window. The storage room had always been my retreat when the restaurant got overwhelming. But having Emma there made it feel less like hiding and more like sharing something important. Can I ask you something? Emma set down her coffee cup and looked at me directly. What do you actually want now? Not what you think you should want? Not what would make your parents happy? Not what would solve the restaurant's problems? What do you want? The question caught me off guard. For so long, my wants had been tied up with Jessica's, with our shared future, with the life we'd planned together. I'd forgotten how to think about what I wanted independently. I want to feel like myself again, I said finally. I want to wake up excited about the day instead of anxious about everything I need to accomplish. I want to be with someone who chooses me every day, not someone who needs to be convinced that I'm worth staying for. Emma nodded slowly. That makes sense. And for what it's worth, I think Jessica lost sight of who you really are somewhere along the way. She started seeing you as this safe, predictable choice instead of the person who used to make her laugh until she couldn't breathe. Used to. I repeated the phrase, realizing how much of our recent relationship had been built on past feelings, rather than present connection. When did that change? I think it changed when you both started treating your relationship like a project to be managed instead of something to be enjoyed. Every conversation became about logistics, about planning, about what needed to be done next. You stopped going on adventures together. She was right. When had Jessica and I stopped taking spontaneous drives up the Columbia River Gorge? When had we stopped trying new restaurants just for fun? When had our dates become wedding planning sessions instead of opportunities to rediscover each other? Jessica used to tell me stories about you, Emma continued, about how you'd show up at her office with takeout from some food truck you'd discovered, just because you thought she'd like to try it, about how you'd plan these elaborate surprise dates that had nothing to do with anything practical. She loved that about you. So what happened? Life happened. The restaurant started struggling. The wedding planning took over. Everyone had opinions about what you should do and how you should do it. You both got so focused on building a future that you forgot to enjoy the present. Emma stood up and walked to the small window, looking out at the alley behind the restaurant. David, can I tell you something that might sound crazy? At this point, nothing sounds crazy. I've been a little bit in love with you for 2 years. The words hung in the air between us, and I felt my entire understanding of the situation shift. Emma turned to face me, her cheeks flushed, but her expression determined. I know the timing is terrible. I know you're dealing with a lot right now, and I know I'm Jessica's best friend, which makes this complicated. But I can't keep pretending that watching you two together didn't break my heart a little bit every time. Emma, I started, but she held up a hand. Let me finish. I'm not telling you this because I think you're going to fall into my arms or anything like that. I'm telling you because I want you to know that there are people who see you clearly, who appreciate who you are right now, not who you might become or what you can provide for them. I stared at her, processing this revelation. Emma had been around for years, had been at countless dinners and gatherings. It's been part of our social circle for so long that I'd never really seen her as separate from Jessica. But now, thinking back, I could remember moments that took on new meaning. The way she always laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones. The way she asked thoughtful questions about the restaurant and my family. The way she seemed genuinely interested in my opinions about things that had nothing to do with Jessica. Why didn't you ever say anything? Because you were with my best friend and you were happy. Or at least I thought you were happy. It wasn't my place to complicate that. Emma sat back down on her crate, closer to me this time, but watching Jessica take you for granted. Watching her treat your relationship like an obligation instead of a gift, it made me angry in a way that surprised me. And now I think maybe the universe is giving us both a chance to figure out what we actually want instead of what we think we're supposed to want. Emma reached over and took my hand, and I was surprised by how natural it felt. Her fingers were warm and calloused from her gardening hobby, so different from Jessica's perfectly manicured nails. There was something grounding about her touch, something that made me feel present in my own body for the first time in days. I need you to know something, I said, looking down at our joined hands. I can't promise you anything right now. I can't promise that I'm ready for something new, or that I won't need time to process what just happened with Jessica. I'm not asking for promises. I'm just asking for honesty. And honestly, I feel like I've been sleepwalking through my own life for months, maybe longer. And sitting here with you, having this conversation, is the first time I've felt awake in I don't know how long. Emma smiled, and it was nothing like Jessica's calculated expressions. It was warm and genuine, and a little bit shy. Start. My phone buzzed with a text message, and we both looked at it reflexively. It was from Jessica. David, Ryan, and I are having dinner at your parents' restaurant tonight. I hope that's okay. I want to support the business, and I think it would be good for us to clear the air. I showed Emma the message, and she shook her head in disbelief. She's unbelievable. She can't just leave you alone, can she? Apparently not. I thought about Jessica and Ryan sitting in the restaurant my parents had built, probably holding hands across the table, probably talking about their exciting new future while surrounded by the remnants of the life Jessica had discarded. You know what? Let them come. Are you sure? I'm sure, because I'm tired of hiding from this situation, and I'm tired of letting Jessica control the narrative. If she wants to bring her new boyfriend to my family's restaurant, then she's going to have to face the consequences of that choice. Emma squeezed my hand. Do you want me to be there for moral support? I looked at her, at this woman who had just admitted to caring about me for years, who had stood up to her best friend on my behalf, who was offering to help me through one of the most difficult moments of my life. Would you not as Jessica's friend, but as mine? Let's be honored. That evening, Emma and I worked side by side in the restaurant kitchen, helping my parents prepare for the dinner rush. She moved through the space like she belonged there, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency and making easy conversation with my mother in her broken Spanish and my mother's improving English. Watching her interact with my family, I realized that this was what partnership was supposed to feel like: natural, supportive, collaborative. At 7 o'clock, Jessica and Ryan walked through the front door. Jessica was wearing a new dress I didn't recognize, something flowing and bohemian that looked like it belonged at a farmer's market rather than a restaurant. Ryan was everything I'd expected, all handsome in a generic way, wearing the kind of casual expensive clothes that screamed tech money. They took a table near the window, and I watched from behind the counter as Jessica pointed out details of the restaurant to Ryan. Probably telling him stories about all the times she'd eaten here, all the family dinners she'd been part of, all the history she was now reducing to anecdotes for her new boyfriend's entertainment. Emma appeared beside me, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Ready? Ready. We walked over to their table together, and I saw Jessica's eyes widen when she realized Emma was with me. Not just with me as a friend offering support, but with me in a way that clearly indicated something had shifted between us. Jessica. Ryan. I kept my voice neutral and professional. Welcome to Chen Family Restaurant. What can I get you tonight? Jessica's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked almost like panic. I didn't expect to see Emma here. Emma's been helping out in the kitchen, I replied calmly. She's got a real talent for it. Now what would you like to order? Ryan looked between Emma and me, clearly picking up on the tension but not understanding its source. This is a nice place, he said, obviously trying to lighten the mood. Jessica's told me so much about it. She said the spring rolls are incredible. They are, Emma said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Chen makes them fresh every morning. It's a family recipe that's been passed down for generations. Some things are worth preserving, don't you think? Jessica caught the subtext immediately. Emma, what are you doing here? Really? I'm exactly where I want to be, Emma replied, moving closer to me. Sometimes it takes a shock to make you realize what's actually important. Ryan was starting to look uncomfortable, probably sensing that this dinner wasn't going to be the simple gesture of goodwill that Jessica had likely presented it as. Maybe we should order some food and keep things light. Light, my father's voice carried from behind the counter. My son's wedding was supposed to be tomorrow. His fiancée canceled it to be with you. What exactly is light about this situation? The restaurant had gone quiet. Other diners now openly listening to our conversation. Jessica's cheeks flushed red and she looked around nervously. Mr. Chen, I understand you're upset, but Jessica and I didn't plan for this to happen. Sometimes feelings just develop naturally. Naturally. My mother emerged from the kitchen, her voice sharp. What's natural about pursuing a woman who's engaged to someone else? What's natural about encouraging her to abandon her commitments? Ryan straightened in his chair, his tech bro confidence faltering. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jessica told me she was having doubts about the wedding long before I came back to Portland. Is that what she told you? Emma's voice was dangerously quiet, because she was trying on wedding dresses 2 weeks ago, talking about how excited she was for the honeymoon. Funny how quickly those doubts developed. Jessica stood up abruptly. Stop it. All of you. Just stop. You're acting like I committed some crime by choosing happiness over obligation. Choosing happiness? I stepped forward, and Emma's hand found mine, giving me strength. Jessica, you didn't choose happiness. You chose what was easy. You chose running away over working through problems. You chose nostalgia over building something real. You don't understand what it's like to feel trapped? No, I don't, I interrupted. Because I never tried to trap you. I tried to build a life with you. There's a difference, but you're too selfish to see it. Ryan stood up too, clearly ready to defend Jessica, but she put a hand on his arm to stop him. For the first time since this all started, she looked truly ashamed. David, I never meant for it to happen this way. But it did happen this way. And now you have to live with the consequences. I looked at Ryan, who was clearly uncomfortable. With being the center of this family drama, you want to know what you're getting into? Jessica has a pattern. When things get real, when commitment becomes more than just a word, she runs. She's done it with jobs, with opportunities, with relationships. You're not special, Ryan. You're just convenient. That's enough, Jessica said, her voice shaking. Ryan, we should go. No, let's stay, Ryan said, surprising everyone. Let's clear the air completely. He looked at me with something that might have been respect. Gah. David, I want you to know that I didn't pursue Jessica while she was with you. She reached out to me first. Jessica's face went pale. Ryan, don't. She called me 3 weeks after I got back to Portland. She said she'd been thinking about me, about what we used to have. She said she felt like she was living someone else's life and wanted to remember what it felt like to be herself again. The restaurant was completely silent now. Even the kitchen had gone quiet. She told me you were a good guy, but that she felt like she was suffocating. She said she needed to feel alive again. Ryan looked genuinely sad as he continued.
Yeah.
I thought I was helping her find herself. I didn't realize I was helping her run away from herself. Jessica sank back into her chair, tears streaming down. Her face, Ryan, please stop talking. No. I think David deserves to know the truth. And honestly, after seeing how she's handled this whole situation, I'm starting to understand what you meant about patterns. Emma squeezed my hand tighter, and I felt a surge of gratitude for her presence, for her strength, for the way she'd chosen to stand with me when it mattered. Jessica, I said, my voice surprisingly gentle, I hope you figure out what you actually want someday, but I hope you do it without destroying other people's lives in the process. Ryan pulled out his wallet and left money on the table. I think we should go. Maybe we should talk about whether this is really what either of us wants. After they left, the restaurant slowly returned to normal. My parents went back to the kitchen, other diners resumed their conversations, and Emma and I stood there, processing what had just happened. Emma said finally, "That was intense. Are you okay?" "I know she's your best friend." Emma turned to face me fully, her expression serious. "She was my best friend. But someone who would hurt you the way she did, who would come here tonight and try to make you feel bad for moving on, that's not someone I want in my life." 6 months later, Emma and I were married in a small ceremony at Powell's Books, surrounded by family and friends who understood that love isn't about grand gestures or perfect. Timing's about choosing each other every day, even when things get difficult. The restaurant not only survived, but thrived. Partly because Emma brought a fresh perspective to the business. Partly because my parents were energized by having someone around who genuinely appreciated their work. And partly because we'd learned that building something together is more important than building something perfect. Jessica and Ryan lasted another month before he moved back to San Francisco, apparently deciding that Portland wasn't as appealing as he'd remembered. I heard through mutual friends that Jessica had started therapy, which I genuinely hoped would help her figure out how to stop running from the good things in her life. Emma and I still laugh about how we met through Jessica, how sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things we never knew we wanted. Love isn't always where you expect to find it, but when you do find it, you know, because it feels like coming home to yourself. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.